Hello, world. Welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. Tiffany Cianci, welcome to the Shannon Joy Show. I just love your work. I love everything you do. And I hope that we can learn from you and continue to learn from you over the next 18 to 24 months, because I think things are going to get incredibly bumpy, despite our hope that the election of Donald Trump and Bobby Kennedy Jr. would kind of set things straight here in the US. A lot of people realizing that there isn't a lot of change so far in the administration. You're one of the people standing up, speaking out, calling that out. Let's start there. Let's just keep it broad. What do you make of the situation for the average American today in the United States of America, regular family, young kid who wants to pursue the American dream, maybe open up a business or start a family, become an entrepreneur? What are our prospects today from your perspective? Let's start there.
From my perspective right now, the prospects of a young person that is aspiring to have a family or the American dream as it was laid out for all of us when we were younger are grim. I don't like to say that they're grim. I want to give people lots of hope, but right now those prospects are grim. They have literally no hope of acquiring a home ever. And so naturally we put out 50-year mortgages because that's easier than addressing the root cause of the problem. Right. We are suffering under immense greedflation. They can call it inflation all they want, but when you look at, like, let's just use Walmart as an example. Walmart in 2024, their total profits were $15.4 billion. This year, they're $19.5 billion. They went up 35% in 1 year while they were, cutting corners for all of us? They were just like artificially hiking prices. It wasn't tariffs. You don't go up 35% in record. They had record profits in 2024, and they've gone up 35% this year. So we have corporations that are squeezing every dollar because they know a crash is coming. Like every corporation can see that the stock market has been artificially propped up for at least a few years, right? You can't have record profits over and over and over again coming out of COVID and think that that is going to go on forever, right? You have artificial shorts and artificial derivatives in the market that are unsustainable. You have housing that is out of control, which has always been a benchmark of economic success in the United States. Right. And we have no possibilities. And for the first time ever, investors are outpacing first-time and second-time home buyers in the marketplace. That has never happened in American history, ever. Which means that for every one house that a first-time home buyer is buying, 1.4 houses are getting bought by investors.
It's wild. We're going to get into that. I mean, we're going to get in because, two of the most viral videos that you did, one recently explains why your house that you bought for $189,000 that hovered around $250,000, all of a sudden in the past 2, 3, 4 years has doubled, tripled, quadrupled in price. Absurd, obscene prices, $750,000, $850,000 for the exact same house, driving up property taxes and driving people out of their homes, and also raising the comps in that community, boxing out every human, individual potential home buyer and creating a feeding frenzy for venture capitalists or private equity, which we're going to get to in a moment because we're going to explain that. But I want to slow down for a minute with you, Tiffany, so that this audience can get to know you and understand where you come from and your story. You experienced the essential versus the non-essential designation in 2020. You are a small business owner, a mom, you had a daycare center, loved your job, and you were crushed by the lockdowns of 2020, 18 months that you were shut down and not allowed to operate, while the big boxes and the pot shops and the liquor stores were allowed to operate. It was disgusting. But you fought your way to that position to begin with. Very tough upbringing in a tough life. You're a fighter in every way. If you wouldn't mind, let's take some time, and I just love to hear your story, like how you came to be that small business owner and how you found the will to fight. You were up against everyone in 2020. We need to hear that story first before we get into all the bad stuff, because people need hope, and I see so much hope in you, and I know you're hopeful too, which is another thing that I love about you, right? So let's start there, and let's just get to know you. Tell us that extraordinary story.
If you want me to start with 2020, I'd had a really good career for my whole adult life, and I had worked really hard to put my husband through law school, and he had finally gotten a really good job, and he said, you don't have to travel anymore for work. Find something local, do something local. I had a very professional career that had me traveling all over the world, and I stopped. And I bought a franchise called the Little Gym that was for sale in our community. And the Little Gym, like I had been a dance major in school, and I was like, dance and gym, they're like baby gym, that's not too far apart. And I had a degree in music, and I was like, I can do this. This will be great. I can be with my kids. I don't have to miss things anymore. And I opened a Little Gym franchise, and I was really happy. Like it was hard. It was hard work. I worked long hours, but I brought my kids to work with me, which is what I wanted to do. And I worked hard, and we were really careful. We didn't take on any debt. I paid everything with cash. I made sure that we were fiscally responsible. And then right as I got my phone call that we were like in the black, that we had achieved our first profitable year, that was on March 5th, 2020. And on March 13th, we were locked down. And my community, when I said we were fiscally responsible, I had saved almost $75,000 as a business. That's really hard to do in a kid's space, because the summers were always a little bit harder because people leave for the beach, they go places, they unenroll. Right. So I'd saved all this money to get us through summer, which saved our business. Really long term, it saved our business because we could keep paying our employees. But that only lasted so long. We were shut down, and we were kept there for the second longest lockdown in the US. So Frederick County, Maryland was locked down through July of 2021. Mm-hmm. And then we had to retrain people. We had to rehire people. We had to come in with all of these PPE requirements. So it took months more for us to reopen after we got the go ahead. And during that entire time, you know, we had landlords, we had bills, we had staff. Right. And the problem was, it wasn't just my location. It was 286 locations that were shut down. Mm-hmm. And so our company suffered terribly. The founders had been really generous, and they had told us not to pay royalties while we were closed. And so the company suffered. And one of the investors, the Patel family out of Illinois, they own a bunch of grocery stores there. Everyone knows them in that part of the country. They were one of our investors that was a silent investor. And they secretly sold all of their stakes to a really horrible, evil private equity company called Unleash Brands. And in the matter of literally July 21st, I think was when we were told that we'd been acquired. And it was 2 weeks after I got the go ahead to start reopening.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
It was just horrible. But we weren't the only ones. This company had gone on a buying spree of buying up every company that had been hurt during COVID that served children. They bought Snapology, they had Urban Air trampoline parks, they had XP League, they had Class 101 College Preparatory Academy. Now they have Water Wing Swim School and Sylvan Learning Centers. Everywhere that served children, they were able to squeeze those parents. And
that's interesting because, and you know, it's very frustrating because what happened was that our government, state governments, the federal government, the apparatus that forced the lockdowns and the shutdowns artificially put thousands of businesses that would be healthy and thriving and doing well and serving their communities into a horrible situation, making them vulnerable artificially. not because you did anything wrong and didn't balance your books and weren't providing a service and weren't serving your community, but because you're artificially suppressed and smothered by the entities that shut us down. And that made you sitting ducks. All of these little franchises for these very evil companies, and you said Unleashed Brands is the company, and they're still operating. Are they still in business?
Ugh, well, they're still operating, but they're not operating like they thought they would be operating.
Okay. Well, I like that.
They've lost a lot of money because of me. They've lost a lot of money
because
of me.
Good. Keep going. I cut you off.
Probably hundreds of millions of dollars because of me.
Yes. This is why I like this girl. I told you guys we're going to love her. Okay. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please continue.
Well, they came in and they immediately started making cuts. They were very aggressive. They started terrorizing franchisees. They wanted to break up the union. And I had the honor and responsibility of having recently been elected the president of our union.
Okay.
And with each brand that they had acquired before us, when they wanted to break up the union, they immediately basically started creating a circumstance to sue the union board members. And it was very effective. They told us that we had to sign new contracts. And our contracts were good for a decade. We weren't signing new contracts. They came in and they told us that we were going to be required to sign new contracts. They sent us sneaky contracts that were hidden inside of plain language documents. Like, this is a new ACH agreement to pay your royalties. Just sign it. And it had like 25 new terms buried in one paragraph that overrid our franchise agreements we'd signed a decade ago. Oh, and I happened to be married to a federal attorney. And I told everybody not to sign those documents. I was like, don't sign this. Yeah. And some people did because they were scared, and some people didn't. But then it got worse. They brought in new documents that they told us we had to sign or we were going to be penalized that would increase the royalties we paid, for instance, on a birthday party, and would increase our fees by 75 to 90% over what we were paying. We were just coming out of lockdown. We'd lost everything. And then we took out loans for debt-free gyms like me, which was horrifying. We took out loans to pay the corporate office because when our former founders told us not to pay royalties, these guys came in and said, you're going to pay them now or we're going to shut you down. So we all took out loans.
Oh my word.
And so then they came in and said, and now you're going to pay more money you can't afford. They canceled our insurance company and made us go to a company that they had control over, that their chief legal officer was the guarantor of. There were all of these like shady, like just deals on deals on deals, kickbacks on kickbacks of all the things they were going to make us do. And so we got together, our union, and we hired what they called like the nuclear option of franchise attorneys to represent us. And we sent them a letter and said, we are not going to sign these documents. None of us, not a single one of us, 96% of us. And we started what was called like a communication blockade. They would have a system-wide call. None of us would show up. Not one, not one gym owner. Right. And we did everything we were supposed to do. They got a forceful letter from our lawyer, and the following day they terminated my contract and told everybody they no longer had a union president, and they were on their own. And so we tried to fight that, and they sent us to a secret court system called an arbitration system, where judges are paid for by corporations and they don't have to follow the rules and they don't have to follow the laws. None of the legal things that you think you have a right to in a regular courtroom exist there. And no matter what happened in your case, you have a 97% chance of losing.
Unbelievable. And I've heard you talk about these arbitration courts, these secret courts that many Americans unwittingly, approve when you go and you sign documents to, get an Uber cab or a Lyft or any of those long service agreements, guys, that you're scrolling down and you're hitting agree. Unfortunately, those agreements are locking you in. They're locking you into an arbitration system that is rigged in case you ever have a claim against any of the companies or the businesses that you're engaging with on a regular basis. So everything from a movie subscription to an Uber driver, you name it. If you have a legal claim and you click that box, you waive all of your rights to go in front of a real judge or maybe a jury, and you have to go to arbitration. And in arbitration, it's rigged. The judges are on the payroll of the corporations, and the corporations never lose, and people don't realize this. I mean, it's can't tell you how many I'm embarrassed to admit how many of those agreements I just, hit every time. And so they forced you guys into that situation.
They happen in ways that people don't understand. The average, like, 4-person family, 2 adults, 2 kids, is beholden to anywhere from 150 to 1,200 of them, depending on how much technology they have in their home. And none of them know it. You take your kid to Urban Air Trampoline Park, which I talk about an awful lot because it's owned by the private equity firm that I am fighting. You sign your kid in for a birthday party at the front, and they accidentally forget to snap your kid into a harness, and they fall 40 feet to a concrete floor and break every bone in their body. Arbitration. You're not going to court for your child, and you're not going to win, right? And your child, and this is happening. Like, one of the reasons the company keeps fighting me is because I have documents and I'm testifying for a bunch of children that fell in their trampoline parks. And all of those children, with the exception of 2, have been forced into arbitration. The 2 that weren't were not forced into arbitration because they went with a friend, and there wasn't a parent there to sign the arbitration agreement. They just happened to get lucky the day they almost died, the day they broke every bone in their body, that they weren't with their mom, right? So you go to a theme park. Disney very recently just killed a man's wife, and they tried to force him into arbitration because he had signed up for Disney Plus for a trial 2 years prior on his television. And they said that arbitration agreement should be enforced against him in a theme park. Now, there was mass public backlash, so they withdrew that and settled the case. But then Uber Eats did the exact same thing. An Uber driver caused a horrifying accident because they hadn't been properly vetted by Uber. And the woman and her husband sued. And they said because her 12-year-old daughter had ordered a pizza on Uber Eats 2 years prior, that they should be held to an Uber Eats arbitration agreement that wasn't even with the same company. And that was upheld, and they were forced into arbitration. And so a lot of people don't realize these secret courts exist. They don't realize that 1.4 million court cases each year are litigated in them, and that the person always loses 97% of the time, with more than 90% of these cases all being litigated by one monopoly that is entirely controlled by corporations and really underhanded legal systems.
Hey guys, Justin here with the Satellite Phone Store. And with things like Starlink, satellite messengers and all that, are satellite phones still really something useful in 2025? Well, that depends. If you're deep in the backcountry, out at sea, or working in remote areas and need reliable voice communication, a satellite phone is still unmatched. Unlike messengers that only send a text message, or Starlink, which requires a battery and a big bulky antenna, a satellite phone doesn't require any setup, it doesn't require Wi-Fi, it's a grab-and-go solution that works anywhere in the world. Whether your livelihood depends on it or you're on some crazy expedition somewhere, having a satellite phone with you is the best way to communicate. If you're in an emergency situation, sending a text message may not actually be enough. So being able to hop on the phone with a medical professional or search and rescue and be able to describe exactly where you are may be the way that saves your life. So having a satellite phone, especially in 2025, is still a very useful tool.
I can't tell you how many people I talk to. This is why I'm in such a bad mood, okay? Because you're right. There are some supporters of Trump that are like, I don't care. As long as he's smashing Democrats, I don't care. I think if I were to look at the path of this country and what our leaders want to do, they are acknowledging that the United States of America is over, that we're moving into a global economy. China's going to rule everything. We're going to go to a digital currency. Everyone's going to be surveilled. AI is going to take over. The technocracy will rule. We will own nothing and be happy. It's a renter society. It's a new techno-feudalism. And they're the masters. We're the slaves, right? They own our bodies. They can inject us with whatever they want. They can corral us, move us, cull us, control whether we have children or we don't have children, obliterate our families, take our job, all the things. They don't care. I mean, they would love that, right? I mean, that's been the way of the world for 4,000 years prior to, this American experiment and this experiment with liberty. And so why wouldn't they want to go back to that? I don't think it has to be that way. Like, I do think that if enough, a remnant, enough people in the US begin to build up parallel structures and begin to prepare for themselves and exit the system in a variety of different ways, and begin to simply withdraw their consent for what these people are doing, and then have state actions. There's things that DeSantis is doing in Florida that I think are actually really good. I love the idea that so many Americans have gone out and purchased gold. I think gold is actually going to increase in value and continue to increase in value. I love the idea of local markets, farmer markets, parallel economies, all of these things that I think if enough people engage in, that we can, even if they're trying to crash the economy on our heads fully so that we move into a new slavery-based system, that they won't be able to crash the economy because enough of us will be solvent as an infrastructure at the local and state level. Like, that's kind of my idea. Like, I mean, it's a Hail Mary, of course, because we're going down this road. And again, I don't think that we can stop it. Do you see any value in that kind of thinking? And do you see any opportunity? There are a lot of people watching right now and listening right now who do have an opportunity to make changes, to adjust what they're investing in and make direct changes to how they're conducting family life right now, that I think can be blessings to people in their own neighborhoods and communities. And so, I mean, so that we can end on that note, we have about 5 more minutes left, but what would you say, to my kind of Pollyanna vision of a way out of this, with it, albeit with pain? So, I mean, I think there's going to be pain for everyone, but how does that pain lead to liberty and not tyranny? I guess that's my question. The pain is coming. How do we make it so that we have 50 more years of liberty or 70 more years of liberty and continue this experience? Go ahead.
So believe it or not, we've been here before, and it wasn't that long ago. If you think back, you were saying earlier that what today feels like the 2020s to you, with the lockdowns and the forced mandates and all of that. I would go back a little further to, and this is, I always say that people that are in the MAGA tent, they're just progressive leftists, but 15 years slower and dumber. Right. So if you go to 2008, Obama, the cult of personality, the big tent coalition, the letting in, no bad ideas, let in whatever crazy you want just so we can win and own the other side. The euphoric, reckless doom spending, because that's what's happening right now. It's doom spending. People are just taking every nickel they have and just throwing it into the market, companies they don't understand, just using that to try and keep afloat. Look, that created, not only the roadmap for where we are right now, but it created, problems that we had to dig out of, and we were able to get out of it. We didn't completely get out, but we did get there. So, if we look at how, we had to allow the cancer to metastasize for a while in 2009, going into 2010, before, we had our L-shaped recovery and we started to, become prosperous again. Like, we can do it. And the roadmap is exactly the same. Get small, get local, become agile, find ways to, find pockets of prosperity in the muck.
Yep.
I don't mean to promote my own Twitter, but one of the things I do on my Twitter periodically is just, it used to be once every day. I don't do it so much these days just because the markets, I don't like them right now. I would post a trade that I myself was taking, right? Matter of fact, I just did one this morning. If you were following me this morning, I said, I'm using my knowledge of economics, my knowledge of the markets, my knowledge of the charts to go, you know what? I'm looking at Meta right now, Facebook, and I'm looking at this chart, and if you buy this option right now for this much money, I think you're going to have more money in your pocket by the time it's done. And an hour later, you had 40% more money.
Right. Right.
I used to do that every day. Today was one of the rare ones. I've only done like 3 of them in the last 2 weeks. But yeah, I told people, it was like, look, I found this thing. I'm buying this option contract for, $23.50 a piece. Like an hour later, it was like, okay, it's worth $30 now. Go ahead and take your money.
Right.
Find people that can help you achieve prosperity in spite of all the headwinds that are in front of you. And I don't necessarily mean me. Again, my Twitter account is very sharp edges. It's not for everybody. Like, a lot of people won't like following me, but find somebody you like that is there to help. This is one of those things and I don't charge anything for it. I don't want to
Right.
see people suffer. And I've got this special set of skills. And I go, well, if I talk about it, like everybody around me, the boats will rise with the tide.
Right.
Locate that, get local with your community, find ways that you can barter with one another.
Hmm.
Remove yourself from having to spend the inflated prices on things, in order to, get your basics, your essentials. I know we're coming up on winter, and it's not growing season anymore, in various things, but there are certain pockets you can certainly locate, in order to kind of reduce your exposure to the macro level of risk by an economy that is being destroyed by design by technocrats that do want to control everything, including
Hmm.
your data, uh, I hate to say this because people are going to label me QAnon for it. Social credit scores are definitely a thing they're looking at.
Oh
Central
yeah.
bank digital currencies, all of that nonsense. Like, there are
Yeah.
little things you can do, but it is getting harder and harder to do that because they're applying more and more pressure. To use a poker term, it's like you're sitting at a table with a guy who's got a stack of chips 20 times bigger than yours, and he just
That's
keeps
right.
leaning it into you. Like,
Yes, he does.
it's very
Yep.
hard to fight that because he can just
Yeah.
push it in every time. And you have to go all in every time you want to challenge that guy. Eventually he's going to get you, right? You got to pick your moments, right? You got to be super agile in this. There,
Yeah.
there are ways, but realistically, I mean, you got to start at the local level. You got to change your local governments,
Yeah.
to get people that represent you instead of this cult. My primary residence right now, I don't think it's going to stick, is in Florida, because I was promised that was the utopia for local politics. And I got there, and they elected Randy Fine, and put Anna
Right.
Paulina
Right.
Luna in there again. Like, and I keep
Yeah.
and Byron Donalds is going to be the next governor, and I'm like, all right, well,
Oh,
this was
please
crap.
no.
Uh,
Don't tell me that. Don't tell me
so,
that
but
Byron.
but what
Oh,
the thing is, he's got a
cancer.
bunch of cash, and the only person opposing him, and I keep saying this. It was like, look, we need strong voices with backbone that say this is not right. This is not working. This administration is a crime syndicate. We've gotten rid
I
of
know.
all ethics, all morality. We're dehumanizing one another. We're
Yep.
unpersoning people. Like, we need to get back. We need to get back to the basics, right?
Yeah.
And we need voices that want to be leaders. They're going to say, I will stand up and be that voice. And right now, the only one I can find in the entire country is Bob Good.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
there's
No, I
nobody else. I was a Ron DeSantis backer last year, but my Twitter has
he
gotten a
won't.
little critical
No.
of him lately
Yeah.
because he keeps seeking the approval of these people. At the local level, you need to find people that say this administration is wrong. We're going to dare to be different.
Yeah.
And at a local
And
level, maybe you can thrive,
yeah.
and
And
then build from
Guitar
there.
Lily. Yeah, I see you, Guitar Lily. The local governments are just as crappy as the rest. Some of them are, some of them aren't. And the resistance that we saw, I firmly believe that there will be choices. You will have a choice. You're going to have a choice whether or not to take the digital ID, use digital currencies. It will be hard, just like the vaccines. I think we need to be ready to make hard choices and involve ourselves at the local level. Maybe they're not functioning properly because we've been ignoring them for the past 50 years and we've been focusing on people like Donald Trump and all of the national politics. So, I want to thank you, Bonk. Really great conversation as always. Always appreciate your perspective. And yeah, I think just knowledge is the first step, and then beginning to make decisions in your life, tightening your belt, getting out of debt, getting diversified. As you guys know, I'm in everything. I have a little bit in the stock market, very boring stocks as recommended by Bonk to Carnivore in an earlier session we had earlier in the year. Obviously gold and silver. I think it's still a really great play right now. Every little bit of extra cash that I have, I'm trading in for physical gold and silver. I am keeping some cash on hand. I understand things might fall apart around us, but every day I get up and I go out there and I try to find people who are like-minded, make deals with people who are like-minded, find great sponsors. And I just get up and do it every day. Like, there's a lot that we can't control, but we can control how we do business, who we do business with, and the decisions that we make in our own life. And so that's kind of how I grapple with this. And then I leave the rest to Jesus, right? Like, then we can't take any of this with us. And at the end of the day, God is in control. And so then I leave it all up to him. And I do believe if people acknowledge the trouble that we're in and acknowledge the mistakes that we have made to get into this position, then there can be a future. And so, Bonk, I love ending it on that. Big thank you to our sponsors over at Purge. Right now, this is the product that I've been using. I'm on day 7 of my 15-day intestinal purge. So this is an advanced cleanse for digestive health. And, growing up, speaking of our healthcare system, every time you get sick, whether you have the sniffles, a sore throat, inflammation, you go to the doctor and it's always either a virus or a bacteria, bacteria. So you get an antiviral or an antibacteria. Well, when was the last time you went to your medical doctor when you were dealing with some sort of malady and they said to you, hey, you know what? Maybe it's a parasite. Maybe it's not viral or bacterial, but maybe it's parasitic. This idea that humans can't have parasites or don't have parasites is one of the most interesting suppression suppressed pieces of information that I have seen. And I just thought of, when I first started thinking about parasites, I'm like, wow, like no one ever talks about them. But it is very true that humans can have parasites, and those parasites can impact your health in many, many negative ways. Right now, Purge is giving you guys 15% off of your order if you go to www.purgestore.com/joy. That is purgestore.com/joy. Use the promo code JOY. Join me on this cleanse, right? Again, we can't do anything about the parasites in Washington, D.C., but we can take responsibility for our own bodies and make sure that we are naturally healthy with regular parasitic cleanses. 15% off right now in your order if you go to purgestore.com/joy.
Personal experiences, the worst thing you can do in politics is believe your own spin about your side, about the other side, and about your possibility of even winning. That's something people have to realize too. And so, it's an interesting dynamic because it creates this extreme polarization at the grassroots levels of each political party. But then, it's a uniparty at the top, and that's the challenge with it. Now, what you just hit on is kind of like dealing with the archetypes. So what they're doing. So Jung described archetypes kind of like form without context. I'm pretty partial to Rupert Sheldrake's ideas of morphic fields and morphic resonance. And so I could argue that what's going on with the group dynamics is that the morphic field actually becomes too rigid and it stifles innovation and creativity. He used that theory to talk about how schools of fish go together and birds without actually being taught. But I don't want to get too abstract. But so what you're looking at is think of books or movies. You got romance novels, mystery novels, you got action adventure and fantasy. You got different genres, right? So what they're doing is they create these kind of archetypes within the political sphere, and then you got people coming up to represent your kind of little slice of that. And then you start following, and because you probably agree with them on most things. I mean, the biggest psyop about this is that Nick Fuentes is even important. I mean, I don't have anything against the guy. I don't know him or anything like that. But I mean, there's so many more important newsworthy things
Absolutely.
that are going on, like the fact that your friends and family continue to get sick and die because of this shot. That's going to continue happening in the future, unfortunately, because they all have AIDS, basically, from the early data coming out of research. And that's published, preliminary data already of her research. But I know just talking to her, it's pretty bad.
AIDS. So that's vaccine-induced
autoimmune deficiency syndrome. Yeah. Basically, AIDS with a V in front of it. Yeah, she's saying that their blood work, and this is real world data showing blood work the like a 4,000 patients showing that this thing is going on here, even if you're asymptomatic. So over time, these people are going to get sick. But that's real. That's actually a real thing that people should be focusing on. But because they got the heightened focused over here, people aren't even looking at that because. And look, part of it is, the cognitive dissonance. It's uncomfortable to look at these ugly truths and that kind of thing. So they go into the denial.
Sure.
I get that. When you're dealing with health, a lot of people are kind of hypochondriacs anyway. We just saw that, right? I mean, on the flip side, you can't fix stupid either. But that's just what we deal with, right, in the therapy world. So
Yeah.
It is what it is. But these are cults to a degree with Trump and with RFK Jr. And people continue to buy into making excuses for them. And they'll do this little thing that really isn't nothing, and people will cheer it on because they want to cheer it for something.
Right.
They just want it. I got to tell you something. The truth is never what's painful. It's the meaning you project onto the truth. That might scare you or frighten you, make you uncomfortable. So you avoid the truth. That feeds into the emotional pain, and you avoid that, and then all your problems happen because it feeds into the mental distress. But truth, it's the acceptance of truth that will set you free. The truth is never painful. We have painful experiences, but the truth is not painful. It's that bullshit meaning that you put on. Can I say that? I'm sorry. It's that.
Yes,
BS
you absolutely can. Yeah.
All right. Well, it's bullshit then. So okay. So then everything's bullshit. Because that's the world we're living in today. It's a bunch of actors. Like most of them are being blackmailed or bribed. I'm sure that's the case with RFK Jr. and even with Trump. Look, billionaires aren't naive and millionaires aren't naive, and they both fall into those categories. So these aren't dumb people. They're not dumb people. There's people who like to say that Trump is not dumb. Now, if he's playing 8-dimensional chess, it's against us, unfortunately, at this point. I think it's safe to say. Because he's pushing forward the technocracy. Yeah, sorry.
You will know them by their fruits, right? I mean, let's be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. Did I answer your question? Because I rambled a bit.
No, I think I need another session, Dr. Joe Sansone. I think we're going to have to, we might have to have a weekly session. I think because every single day, I'm like, I am living in the Twilight Zone. Like, I have to look out on a landscape of chaos in the media and these crazy people who have huge platforms.
But Shannon, this goes all over the place. So it's not just because I'm going to tell you right now, people don't want to look at the truth. Like right now, you see DeSantis out there pushing, because they're pumping him as a potential presidential candidate. But people need to understand, he argued to keep the mRNA injections on the market in my first case.
I remember that.
These people are not what they pretend to be. And I remember years ago, a friend of mine who was a state senator in Jersey had said to me, he's like, Joe, I think to get to Congress or that level above, you can't get there unless they have blackmail on you. And
like that.
There might be, and this is back in the 90s, and there might be a high degree of truth to that, unfortunately. Briefly,
so truth. Yeah. Let's talk about your case. I meant it. No, well, I want to get you out because I know you have a heart out at 1, and I want to respect your time. But I meant it when I said I actually think this would be an amazing weekly thing.
You give me the topic ahead of time, and then I'll come up with an angle on. We can do something like that. Yeah.
Because just what you said, there's so many things there, and I really want my audience to be able to battle against this, right? Because I've had to battle against this. Being sucked into one side or the other, having to grapple with false choices, the pressure from my peers and peer groups to fall in line and support the candidate, grappling with fear.
Here's what it is. It's okay to support one side when they're right on something, but it doesn't mean you have to support them on everything. When they're wrong, call it out. And look, and that's the way. Because look, you got the cults on the other side with Gavin Newsom. And I mean, the Democrats. Pelosi. These people are total cultists. There's no question. So, but I think we have to be a little more cerebral, a little more intelligent. Look, I'm passionate, so I'm not saying not being passionate, but the truth. It's the truth. Don't fall for the BS. Yeah. So, okay, real quick on my case. So,
let's go.
What happened was the appellate court yesterday. When I first saw it, I thought it was really bad news. They dismissed my case. But then when I realized they did not affirm the lower court's dismissal, They dismissed my appeal, and basically what they're saying is I should have never filed my appeal because I could have still amended my complaint at the trial court. However, the reason I didn't is
Okay.
because when my motion for rehearing was denied at the trial court, the judge basically threatened me with sanctions. So I wasn't going to file anything else in that court. So I appealed it.
Mhm.
So and I argued out of my case that I wasn't being allowed to appeal because of that. But so long story short, I would have preferred a reverse and remand with instructions, going back. But this is kind of a win. I kind of won by losing here because
Okay.
I'm back in trial court.
Okay. And remind us about your case and what you are hoping to achieve with this.
So basically, I am suing the governor and attorney general of Florida because the injections are weapons of mass destruction. I had triple bypass heart surgery and congestive heart failure. When I had my operation, my ejection fraction was like 15. And I got it up to like in late January, it's up to 35 to 40. I just had it done in late October. It's back down to 15 to 20. So like literally I could drop dead at any minute. So I'm arguing that I'm injured from the shedding and that because these injections, I bring in the Florida Civil Rights Act, and because I have a pre-existing condition, I have a right to public accommodation, and I'm also making a constitutional argument that I have a right to my life. So I already filed my amended. The decision came out yesterday. I already filed my amended complaint with the trial court last night. So we'll see what happens if they give me my summons and I can serve the defendants, and we move forward.
And what happens if you are victorious in your case? What would that mean for Floridians and Americans, people across the nation?
If I actually won my case at the trial court, it means that the mRNA injections would be prohibited in the state of Florida. That would just blow the whole thing up. So what I'll probably do is, hopefully I can get an evidentiary hearing early on for a preliminary injunction and present evidence and make that happen.
Yeah.
I'm not naive.
Mr.
I know what I'm up against, but we have to go through these steps of escalation. Everybody wants to go kinetic, and I'm like, well, file some cases, do more, because
I'm an everything but the kitchen sink kind of gal. I'm like
everything and the kitchen sink, and I'm everything and the kitchen sink and more.
The key to the next 5 years is to keeping as many people as humanly possible off of the digital currency and off of the digital ID. And that's going to be tough, right? They're going to give us a lot of incentive, a lot of coercion, manipulation. They're even going to try force probably to get us to move out of those physical stores of wealth and into a crypto stablecoin token or Bitcoin, whatever it is. And we just need enough people to stay out of that system completely. And that's going to build the infrastructure of the resistance, and it will be local. So yeah, that's great. Frank PRB. Oh, Frank boycotted the recent elections and I live in Kansas. We should talk as we concluded our 12 senses workshop, got some new takeaways, and we are doing more to improve our 12 senses. I love that, Frank. I do want to talk to you about that. We have Matrix Hole is with us. JLK Den. Great to see you on the live chat. Lots of new friends. Mod Trend is with us as well. Let's hit this headline, which I love. I love bringing great news to all of you. There's not a lot of great news out there because everyone's crazy. These political people are crazy. Crazy. I can't even believe this is my job sometimes. Again, I was not anticipating this craziness with politics. I just wanted to, analyze the news and maybe offer some perspective, build a show. I could never have imagined the headlines that we cover today on the Shannon Joy Show when I launched this 12 years ago. But these are the good ones. This is in the state of Washington from Newsbreak. Across the United States of America, thousands of automated license plate readers quietly watch the roads. Some ride along in police cruisers, others are perching on telephone poles or hang above intersections, clicking away as cars glide past. They record everything in sight, regardless of who is behind the wheel. And I got caught up in New York State in one of their drag nets. I was going just a little bit over the speed limit, although I don't really know that I was. I just got a notice. I got a letter 3 weeks later saying that I broke a law somewhere. I was in a work zone, and they gave me a $200 fine and ticket. I had to pay it, or they're going to suspend my license, which I'm like, is this just like where do I go to defend myself? How do they know I was speeding? How do I know I was speeding? It really is very strange. Anyway, so they're everywhere, and they're highly unconstitutional, and they violate our right to privacy. Fourth Amendment, in my opinion. But it's a vast and largely invisible network, one that most people never ever think about. And it turns out that according to a judge's recent decision and public data, that these pictures are now public data. And almost as soon as that decision landed, local officials scrambled to shut down the flock cameras in their communities. The ruling stems from a civil case involving the Washington cities of Sedro-Woolley and Stanwood. Both sued to block public records requests filed by Oregon resident Jose Rodriguez. He works in Walla Walla, and he sought to access the images as part of a broader inquiry into government surveillance. So I would love to talk to Jose. This is pretty interesting. He basically said, I want to look into government surveillance, and I want your records. I want your cameras and all the pictures that you take with your cameras as you're surveilling your own citizens in your own little towns. I want to see them. And they said, you can't see them. And so he sued them. Judge Elizabeth Yost Nedwisky sided with Rodriguez in a groundbreaking blockbuster ruling, concluding that the data collected by government officials on public streets with flock cameras are indeed public record. And she said they are also subject to the Public Records Act. The decision immediately, like that, led both cities to deactivate their entire flock camera systems. Flock cameras are mounted along public roadways and continuously photograph passing vehicles, including occupants, regardless of whether or not a crime was suspected. So the technology is marketed probably by companies associated with Peter Thiel and the techno-fascists, and it is a tool to, prevent crime or maybe look to pre-crime. And it's to identify stolen cars, vehicles connected to active investigations, yada, 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 right? Rodriguez said the indiscriminate nature of the technology motivated his requests. Rodriguez said this, I felt like that's violating my privacy. Everyone's privacy, he explained. It's taking pictures of you all day long, every day, in every single vehicle that passes by. That sweeping action, the system photographing everyone, was central to the judge's ruling. Attorneys for the two cities argued that releasing these images would compromise the privacy of innocent people and could expose them to risks of stalking. So the government can stalk you and violate your privacy, but if you would like to see the pictures that the government took of you when they violated your privacy, well, no, they now want to protect you from stalking. I would like to be protected from the government stalkers, right? Why don't we put cameras in every single government official's home and in their car, right? Because if you're a public official, maybe we, the people of the United States of America, have the right to watch what you're doing because you're taking our tax dollars, you're taking our resources and deploying them, right? You don't have the right to look into what we're doing. It's totally backwards. Good for you, Jose Rodriguez. I want you to come on my show. I love that he did this. Again, guys, one guy, local judge, local community, and look what happens. If this happened in 1,000 more cities, it's over. It's done. Ironically, the same argument that it's the same argument that so many who oppose these cameras make. Although law enforcement and other private companies say that access is limited, the reality is there's no system without flaw. And by the way, we don't have access to their systems, right? So where is the oversight? Where are checks and balances, right? This is crazy. Ultimately, the judge ruled that there were so many photos, which largely disconnected from active criminal investigation, they had to be released under state law. Good for her. Rodriguez's attorney, Tim Hall, said that the ruling highlights how little oversight exists. Hall noted that Flock's software, Flock is the company, extends beyond simple plate recognition and is capable of identifying vehicles through model details, dents, bumpers, stickers, and roof racks. And I guarantee you the technology is out there, facial recognition, so that they can surveil us even more extensively. Attorneys for the city say they will review the decision before determining whether to appeal. But for now, the flock cameras are turned off. And that is a huge, huge, huge development. Because they are, we have a bunch of new streetlights going in my village, and I'm looking at them. I'm like, do they have cameras? This surveillance, this move, it's largely Republican too, by the way. rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy. That is rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy. Amazing sponsors of the Shannon Joy Show. And with Rocket Dollar, you can move a portion of your retirement out of the government to Wall Street controlled stock market and into private investments, physical gold and silver, and or real estate, which is what I love about Rocket Dollar. I just did an interview last week with Henry Yoshida. You just saw on that commercial that we ran, but this is from Technocracy. Patrick Wood wrote this. Even the tech billionaires at this point know that the AI bubble is about to burst. And he says that AI is the mother of all the bubbles. And when it pops, the explosion will take out most of the AI companies, all of their suppliers, writes Patrick Wood. Work will stop on half-finished AI data centers. Others will be shuttered because there will be no money to maintain them. When corporations realize that the ROI on billions of dollars invested never materialize, many will collapse under their own weight. And when that happens, as you all know, 30 to 40% of the entire value of the stock market is in the Magnificent Seven, those 7 tech companies. If you are not diversified out of the traditional retirement funds that are featured in the 401ks and IRAs, you are at risk. It's not just gold and silver, physical gold and silver, but they also have real estate, private equity, private corporations, even crypto, if you're interested in crypto, which I am not, but they give you that option as well. So go to rocketdollar.com/joy. That is rocketdollar.com/Shannon Joy. Let's go to Shelly, who is the mom of Judah. First, congratulations on your amazing, amazing little boy who is battling and fighting and doing well. I'm sorry, I have kids myself. I'm so sorry that you're dealing with this. How is Judah doing today? And if you would please just give us your story and let the audience know what has happened.
Okay. So Judah's been in remission for 21 months. As of today, he's doing great, all things considered. Our story is, I think I just want to say my heart goes out to the other pediatric cancer families who value medical freedom and informed consent, because that is out the window at diagnosis. And we learned immediately. They diagnosed him with leukemia based on one CBC panel. And they said, we're starting chemo today. We're going to implant an IV port in his chest, and we're starting chemo today. We said, we'd like a second opinion and some time to research what's going on. This seems very fast. And the tone shifted immediately. There was a social worker in the room. And the overwhelming response was, you don't have the opportunity or the freedom to ask questions, to get second opinions. You will do the 2.5 years of chemo that are the one-size-fits-all approach for this diagnosis, and that's it. That's it. It was very clear that we had no option. And so the safest thing to do was to do the chemo and protect him with integrative therapies. So when we say integrative, we mean in addition to the mandated required therapy through the hospital, we've done a great deal of other things that are non-pharmacological. So supplements, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, acupressure, so all kinds of things, red light therapy, anything that is evidence-based to help manage the symptoms and side effects of the chemotherapy. And so for almost 2 years, we've been walking on eggshells, watching every word, making sure that we don't disrupt the system that doesn't want to be questioned. And we've done a darn good job. And he's done amazing. Just as an example, most of these kids need frequent blood transfusions because of the damage from the chemo. At one point, his red blood cell count was getting low, and we said, we're going to do extra hyperbaric oxygen therapy. We're going to add in chlorophyll, vitamin A, feed him organ meat. Things we were doing anyway, but we're going to up it. Give us 3 days and we can fix this. And so they said, okay, come back in 3 days. We're going to do the transfusion. We didn't want blood transfusions. We declined blood products for religious reasons. And we went back 3 days later, he was back in the safe zone. So it works. It absolutely works. And we've seen it work because he is thriving through treatment with these integrative supports. And so for about the first 9-10 months of treatment, it was okay. They just couldn't figure out why he was doing okay. But they kept saying, whatever you're doing, keep it up. He's doing great. At that point, all of the chemo was by IV. And then last year, about this time last year, there's a shift, and he moved into what they call maintenance therapy. And there's more oral chemo at home and less IV chemo at the clinic. And they started asking more questions. Why does he look so good? He looks too good. He has his hair. He plays. He goes to school. Why does he look so good? And we kept telling them we're supporting him in all these ways. We gave them long lists of every supplement, everything we did, even the things they think are silly, like praying over his medication before we give it to him. And it got more and more hostile. And if we fast forward to late summertime, they said, if he doesn't start to look sicker, and we're going to measure that based on his absolute neutrophil count, we're going to make a CPS referral. We think you're not giving his medication at home. And
Shelley,
we were
can
Go
I
ahead.
just say,
Go ahead.
So in July of last summer, the other turning point though was that when you said Judah's doing so well, can we just look at his remaining treatment, and is there any? Could we even discuss adapting it to his current state of health? And then that it also flipped then too, right? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think that's an important point that you just.
That's true. So the world of pediatric cancer, the research is many years behind, and the protocols are many, many years behind what should be updated. There's just not a big enough sample population, right? Kids don't get cancer very often, and so they're struggling to get up to date and do the latest things. So when new studies are published and they're peer reviewed and they're really strong, it takes many years to get those into the protocol. So we had brought a few studies. And I'm sorry, the baby's waking up from
That's
nap.
okay. I was just saying, don't worry. I love the sounds. I love it. Don't worry about it.
Let me grab him quick and then he won't cry.
Yeah, no, go for it. It's absolutely fine. I just can't believe that they would say your child looks too healthy. So the clinic is demanding a sick child. They're saying we need him to lose his hair. We need him to look sick. We need him to be sick in order for us to believe that you are administering poison, which is chemo. I mean, we understand why people administer chemo. It's to kill the cancer, but it kills, a lot more than just the cancer. And it's actually quite controversial. A lot of people, and I'm not saying that you guys believe this, but there are a lot of people who decline chemo for their own reasons. The idea that there's no choice for parents. So once you go into that system, I mean, that astounded me right at the beginning, that once that diagnosis comes in, you are held hostage. The family is held hostage. Because they'll take your child if you don't follow the recommended protocols, which is blowing my mind. That in and of itself is blowing
it's
my
pretty
mind.
Crazy. And we weren't doing anything wild, right? So these are all evidence-based decisions. For example, there is a lot of evidence that shows mistletoe therapy is a really gentle and safe way to maintain remission. And they told us we couldn't do it. We just couldn't. They wouldn't allow it. They wouldn't allow high-dose vitamin C, which is also a really effective treatment to maintain remission, prevent infection. Even simple things. There's a study showing that curcumin, just taken orally, like a supplement, acts as a cytotoxic tool against acute lymphoblastic leukemia. His very specific diagnosis. They said we couldn't take curcumin. It's unsafe.
Oh my God. Oh my
And
gosh.
we're talking about published studies to support this, not just some mom with a pile of vitamins. We also had guidance from integrative care providers. We weren't just flying blind out here. We had professional support to help us make decisions about these. So the tone was very much, we don't like your questions. We don't like you bringing research to show us there might be a better way. We don't like hearing that our protocols are outdated. And so we hit this point where they started threatening a CPS referral. And that sent shockwaves out. Judah is 8. He can hear them. He knows what they're saying. He knows what CPS is. He's seen Lilo and Stitch. He knows they're trying to separate families. So he started having panic attacks in the clinic. It's awful, absolutely heartbreaking. He's so scared. So at that point, we retained an attorney just for guidance. Like, what do we do? How do we make sure we're safe? And he said, hire a nurse to come to your house and give the meds and document it and then show them, how could you say we're not giving them meds? Not only is it in his blood work at every single visit, they test for it. Now we have someone else delivering meds that's not us, a licensed nurse, and she takes a video, she signs an electronic log, and she signed a notarized affidavit. So she checks the dose, she makes sure that it's the right pills, she does all the things that a nurse in a hospital would do. So we compiled that evidence. We also piled up some studies that show how a child could do this well based on the supports we're giving him. And our attorney sent a letter sharing all of that. Here's why Judah is doing so well, and here's how we can absolutely prove with no doubt that he's getting all of his oral meds at home. And we gave that to them. We sent it to the CEO of the hospital. They had it in hand. They read it. They confirmed they got it. And at the next appointment, they drew his blood. His ANC was still higher than they wanted to see. They said, we're making the referral. I said, but we can prove to you. And they didn't even want to look at the nurse's logs, at any of they didn't want to see the evidence. They just decided to make the referral. The other thing they did was dismissed us from their care, which has just created a firestorm for us, because as we started calling around other hospitals and they heard that, that there's an open CPS investigation and there's an attorney involved, they don't want to touch that. But he has 5 months of treatment left. And so they left us in this pickle where they're saying, you're not providing enough care, and we're also going to dismiss you from care. Good luck finding someone to it's crazy.
This is evil.
It's
This is
evil.
Which if they don't get Judah the care that he needs in a certain amount of time, then the parents will be held responsible, and when they were the ones that were dismissed by their provider.
And all of this is
This is
based on
outrageous.
that he's just thriving, and they don't like seeing a neutrophil count that could actually fight infection, because their meds usually suppress that to a very low level. And the rub here is that if it gets too low, we're going to need human blood products to keep him afloat. And that's something that we are religiously opposed to. So we can prevent compromising on our sincerely held beliefs here by keeping him strong with very gentle things, therapies and supplements. And they're actively fighting against us to say, don't worry about it, let him fail, and we'll just take him inpatient and keep him afloat with human blood products. And so now there's this really ugly dance we're having to do, where if we're being watched very closely right now, if we do too much, if we detox him too fast, he looks good, right? And his symptoms are managed, and that's suspicious somehow. If we stop, which we've had to do, he gets nauseous, he has headaches, he has neurotoxicity symptoms that are really scary. And that's what's going on right now. He's really battling some really hard symptoms like the other kids in treatment, because we're afraid to do too much and have them say, see, we were right. He should be sicker if he's taking the meds. And so it's just this impossible situation where we know today I could solve every symptom. He's laying on the couch down below me right now. I could make him feel great and he would be outside riding his bike, except I can't, because if he looks too good while they're watching, we don't know what to do. And so far, CPS has followed their policy. They did their initial interviews. They questioned us, questioned the kids, searched the house, all of that. They have their follow-up interview tomorrow. They'll be back. We provided all the evidence, the lab work that shows the meds are in his blood, the nurse's log. They have all of that. But we just don't know, because the reality is, even though the assigned social worker seems professional and amicable, the people who she works with, we're at the mercy of the biases of, let's say, the CPS doctor who they hired to review his file, or whoever is going to look over this and make the ultimate decisions. If they're not somebody who's ever seen integrative care work this well, they're going to say, there's no way. This doesn't make sense. Because it's almost like a belief system at this point, because our mainstream medical system is silenced how effective these tools are. And so we're just waiting.
I'm trying to fathom. So this children's hospital, instead of seeing a family using complementary care, which is mitigating the impact of horrifying rounds of chemotherapy, which no one wants to go through, right? Rather than them saying, wow, what are you doing? How is this kid doing so well? How can we do this for other children and other families? Not only are they not cognizant enough and, open-minded enough to acknowledge that, they are actively persecuting you and persecuting and harming your son, forcing you to harm your son while simultaneously, by withholding this complementary care, while simultaneously kicking you out of their care and
Yeah.
basically throwing you on the street, and then also calling CPS, which is adding additional stress and and could has the potential to take him out of your care. Like, this is, it seems like absolutely hostile. You mentioned, and maybe Kirsten, you can chime in here, that this is clearly they want to protect some type of protocol or authority or some sort of medical dogma that they believe about cancer and the treatment of cancer for children, and they need to make sure that that is protected, that their authority is protected, that they continue to decide who lives and who dies, that the parent is never ever allowed to have any statement or any input whatsoever in the treatment of their child. I just want to tell you a little bit about my financial advisor. He's been with me for over 15 years, Don Polano of PCM and Associates. As you all know, my philosophy on investing is all of the above. So, you know, I'm hugely bullish on gold and silver, physical gold and silver, and also the gold and silver IRA. I also love real estate, which I can't get into right now because it's too overpriced. So that's kind of a bummer. But I also have money in the stock market, the good old traditional stock market. Now, right now, I am not in tech stocks at all whatsoever. I have very, very boring stocks and some international. And this is what I love about Don Polano, is that he knows, he respects my belief system. He shares my belief system. And for what I do have in the stock market, in those investments for my retirement, he takes great care of me. He helps people all over the country and the world. And he is taking on clients, opening it up to all of you. So if you go to 1-800, if you call 1-800-536-1368, that is 1-800-536-1368. You can talk to Dom and get started. If you are unsure of the politics of your financial advisor, or if you're a little jittery about the stock market right now and you want to move some things around, he is your guy. You can also go to pcmpolano.com to learn more about him. That is pcmpolano.com. It is wonderful to have a financial analyst and advisor who shares my values, and that's Don Polano. 2020 is the reason that this economy still continues to be in crisis. We have a dollar devaluation. We have more pressure from BRICS nations as the de-dollarization is happening globally, placing more pressure on the American economy, and everything is grinding to a halt. This is because we have not addressed the original sin of governments for the past 20, 30 years, bailing out banks, bailing out the financial sector, and we're seeing it happen again. The title here, we still haven't faced the economic madness of 2020, where they doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down on trillion-dollar money printing and debt and deficit spending. And so this is why you have a slowdown across nearly every sector in the American economy, and massive, massive amounts of layoffs, businesses going out of business. We talked to Bank de Carnivore last week on Thursday about the canary in the coal mine, which is Chipotle. It is obviously a very popular restaurant for young people ages 18 to 35, and they saw one of their worst quarters. This is indicating, and Bank de Carnivore mentioned that, you know, this could be the canary in the coal mine, indicating that regular people are running out of money. They're facing higher energy prices, inflation in every single category, despite what the government is telling us. We're looking at healthcare premiums set to utterly devastate so many families, small to medium-sized businesses, and the middle class. Of course, the working poor, the primary beneficiaries of SNAP benefits, also feeling the squeeze as their payments have been canceled. Meanwhile, we have lobster thermidor and dancing girls and girls in champagne glasses. Let them eat cake. Debauchery. The optics are terrible at Mar-a-Lago. It's a palace of Versailles style opulence, obscene wealth, debauchery. And this is the weekend, right as they are cutting SNAP benefits. So I have a piece here, and you really can't blame, Democrats are outraged by this. And frankly, I don't know how you can blame them. I mean, this is pretty outrageous. And yes, the pictures are absolutely real. He hosted his party on October 31st. Working poor. Did you call me, Shannon? Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, things are getting harder and harder and harder for those who do not occupy the top 3% of the wealthy in this nation. And those were the people primarily that gathered at Mar-a-Lago over the weekend on Halloween. Donald Trump hosted a lavish, Great Gatsby themed Halloween party at his Mar-a-Lago resort. It was titled "A Little Party Never Killed Nobody," and it was a nod to F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel about the Great Gatsby. But it's drawing an enormous amount of criticism for the opulence, and this happening amidst a government shutdown that is now freezing federal funding. 42 million Americans now, and we can debate SNAP. We can debate welfare. We can have conversations about welfare in the United States of America. But why is it they always go after the poor first? There are massive welfare queens out there at the billionaire status. People like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, Palantir, and many of Musk's various businesses. One of their largest customers is the Department of Defense. They operate with massive amounts of subsidies, huge government contracts, and largesse. I mean, if you want to talk about welfare, why not address corporate welfare first? Why not address the insider trading and the pay to play and the corruption and the money laundering? I mean, this idea that a congressman or a senator can go to Washington, D.C., making $165,000 a year, 3 years later, walk out of Washington, D.C. with a net wealth of $2.5 million to $5 million. Like, what is it? Like, why don't they ever go after that type of corporate welfare or political welfare, that type of grifting? It's always the poor and the middle class, the working poor, and also the sector of the economy, small and medium-sized businesses that just get crushed. They got crushed in the lockdowns of 2020 when we saw the largest redistribution of wealth from a working middle class to the elite 1%, creating 500 new billionaires in the course of 8 months, the end of 2020. Those were Trump's lockdowns. So yeah, we do need to talk about welfare, but why not start with the corporate welfare, the billionaire welfare? These people are disgusting. They're disgusting. They help themselves to our tax dollars, and they continue to tax us through the hidden tax of inflation, devaluing our currency so that regular Americans can't pay their bills, can't pay for their health care, go further and further into debt, cut corners in every aspect of their life, making everything difficult for you and me while they steal our money. And they steal from us through inflation, through government policies, through profligate spending, through tariffs. It's one blow after another. And it's let them eat cake. Really disgusting. And Christians don't even know about this. I mean, the dancing girls, the debauchery, I mean, it was all very distasteful. Christians don't even know about it because they get all their news from conservative influencers who are paid to not tell them anything about what's really going on. And so they don't see, the small percentage of Trump supporters who only watch Fox News and listen to Sean Hannity, listen to talk radio and Glenn Beck, and get their news from the influencer class, like people like Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson, Laura Loomer. They have no idea what's going on out there, right? Because largely, many of them are insulated from a lot of these economic problems if it's the boomer class, right? But I mean, more and more people are feeling the real impact of this. And so they have no idea. They think that Trump's at church somewhere. Meanwhile, I don't even know. It's crazy. So we're going to look at that today. We're going to look at the response to the debauchery. We're also going to look at We have a lot of stories. We're going to look at this piece by Mises. We have not addressed the economic madness of 2020. There's good news out there as well, though. Really great video of Mike Rowe. Everybody loves Mike Rowe. And I think it's because he's a normie. He's not too political. But there is a viral video making its way across the internet that is really blowing the lid off the insanity of the vaccines that we inject into our bodies. And he had an interview with a fellow named Gavin DeBecker, who is actually a criminologist, but he wrote a book on vaccines. It's called The Forbidden Facts, Government Deceit and Suppression About Brain Damage from Childhood Vaccines. And they went over the ingredients list in these childhood vaccines culturally. And I actually have a personal story to tell. I went out to dinner with a really great girlfriend. She owns a marketing agency and an advertising agency. And what she was telling me about the pharmaceutical industry in context of actual pharmacies and their marketing for vaccines. Unbelievable story. We can't have wins. There are no wins to be had in Washington, D.C. They are just screwing us left and right. Doesn't matter if it's Biden or Trump. It doesn't matter if it's the Republicans or the Democrats. They are continuing to fleece the American people and drive this economy into a ditch. And so, as you guys know, I don't see any wins in Washington, D.C., but there are big cultural wins happening from outside of Washington, D.C., and not even in the political sphere. It's in the cultural realm where people are becoming more and more cognizant to the two-party political farce, the fact that both the political parties are completely corrupt and that they work together to divide Americans on a regular basis as they plunder this country and push us into second or third world status as we move into the new 21st century global economy. And so more and more Americans are waking up to this and completely omitting themselves from that political process. But, you know, the response of regular Americans to vaccines, which has been one of the most propagandized issues over the past 50 to 60 years. I mean, people were just knee jerk. Everyone got vaccinated. No one ever questioned vaccines, ever, ever, ever. Well, vaccination rates are down across the board in every category, including COVID-19 mRNA shots, but also flu shots, regular shots for adults, and even within the childhood vaccine schedule. And this is because the culture, despite billions upon billions of dollars in propaganda, despite the fact that Donald Trump is out there pushing his COVID vaccines and pushing the childhood vaccine schedule and pushing the vaccine schedule in general, the HHS is marketing all of these vaccines, despite all of that, from Democrat presidents and Republican presidents over the span of 20, 30 years. Like, Americans are not buying it anymore. And that video, we have videos from Mike Rowe that are really great. And also I have my anecdotal story about what happens when these pharmacies, they have to run these ads pushing the flu shot every year. I think it's a government thing. They get either kickbacks, subsidies, bonuses. I'm not sure what the structure is, but they have to roll out these flu commercials. And the response that they're getting, and this is from a gal, she's a normie, okay, and she's a marketer. It's a great story. So we're going to talk about that as well. I have some videos from the Let Them Eat Cake, debaucherous party down in Mar-a-Lago. Yes, I saw that Tom Massey got married in October. Congratulations to Tom Massey. I think that's amazing. And I thought he looked really happy. I interviewed him last Monday. And after that interview, we were talking about his farm bill, the Prime Act, among other things. But I thought in that interview, he seemed very, very happy to me. And I was like, oh, I'm glad to see he's feeling better. He had a real tough go of it, losing his wife well over a year ago. And he recently got married in mid-October. And so love is in the air. I think it's great. A lot of people have a lot to say about whether or not he should get married. I think it's fine. And it doesn't even matter what I think. I don't think that we should judge whether or not people should get married. So there's some people think it's a little bit controversial. I think it's just fine. And I know a lot of, I've known of men after they lose their wives, many of them actually get married very quickly after. I'm not going to judge the time frame, and I think that whatever is the right amount of mourning time for them is good for them, and I'm not going to say a word about that. No way. So we have a lot to get to. A lot of stories in my top headlines for today. But as you know, as I mentioned, no one's in Washington, D.C. And, it seems as if it's likely impossible to purge the parasites in Washington, D.C. They have enormous amount of power. We're going to have to defeat them from the outside in, culturally, by not complying, by refusing to play the game, whether it's the electoral game, the vaccine game, you name it. The goal here is for the culture to flip the board. And so there are a lot of ways that we can win. Now, you can, however, purge the parasites in your bodies. And that is what I'm doing right now. I want to have, big thank you to our sponsors over at Purge. Right now, this is the product that I've been using. I'm on day 7 of my 15-day intestinal purge. So this is an advanced cleanse for digestive health. And, growing up, speaking of our healthcare system, every time you get sick, whether you have the sniffles, a sore throat, inflammation, you go to the doctor, and it's always either a virus or a bacteria, bacteria. So you get an antiviral or an antibacteria. Well, when was the last time you went to your medical doctor when you were dealing with some sort of malady, and they said to you, hey, you know what? Maybe it's a parasite. Maybe it's not viral or bacterial, but maybe it's parasitic. This idea that humans can't have parasites or don't have parasites is one of the most interesting suppressed pieces of information that I have seen. And I just thought of, when I first started thinking about parasites, I'm like, wow, like no one ever talks about them. But it is very true that humans can have parasites, and those parasites can impact your health in many, many negative ways. In fact, this came out in scientific reports in August of 2025. It was an eco-epidemiological study on Ecuador's coastal communities, and they found that 32% of 160 humans were infected with intestinal parasites. So this is something I think also as humans, really the past 100 years are the first time that most people have animals living with them inside their homes. So whether you have cats or dogs, if they're outside and coming in, I think that it makes a lot of sense to make sure that we're doing a parasite cleanse on a regular basis. And I love this product from Purge. I feel great. So bloating, lethargy, inflammation, all sorts of things can result from parasitic infection. So right now it's a 15-day intense intestinal cleanse, and it contains 17 natural ingredients, including wormwood extract, and this is designed to eliminate parasites, protect intestinal health, and stimulate immune cell production. It also safeguards your vital organs, but it's essential to have the plan in place to prevent future infestations. So you got to flush out the parasites. I'm doing it right now. Day 7 of my purge. It looks like this. Right now, Purge is giving you guys 15% off of your order if you go to www.purgestore.com/joy. That is purgestore.com/joy. Use the promo code JOY. Join me on this cleanse, right? Again, we can't do anything about the parasites in Washington, D.C., but we can take care of it. We can take responsibility for our own bodies and make sure that we are naturally healthy with regular parasitic cleanses. 15% off right now in your order if you go to purgestore.com/joy. TJ is going to pop that link up in the live chat and in the comments section right here on Rumble. So we're going to go to a quick break. Hopefully I can get my video up in the break, and then we're going to get into the news of the day. We're going to look at the grifting influencers of Con Inc. This is from Nick Short at Political Short. I linked this onto my show notes as well. Really great piece. If you've wondered why Con Inc. BizarroCon and conservative media is constantly lying to you, or if they're constantly lying to you, Nick Short pulls back the curtain and gives a lot of insight into what's going on with the influencer class in the conservative movement. It's a big, big problem. And these people are not conservatives. They're not constitutionalists. And frankly, most of them aren't Christians. And I think that that's evident when you see what's going on down in Mar-a-Lago, all of the debauchery and the debased culture. I think it's very, very clear that there has been an infiltration within the conservative Christian constitutional movement. Remember when Andrew Tate, the self-admitted pimp, pornographer, and child rapist, was all of a sudden getting 10 million views a week on Twitter and on Rumble and other platforms, and everyone was just absolutely shocked. How can this? It's because this guy is appealing to young white men who are marginalized. They're sick of the woke leftist culture on American college campuses, and so they're flocking to Andrew Tate. No one's flocking to anyone. These are algorithmically created entities that are a bizarro version of conservatism or America First, or I don't know what it is. Some Nick Fuentes claims to be driven by his America First ideology and his Catholicism, which makes absolutely no sense. He doesn't explain any of that in any real detail in this interview with Tucker Carlson, but he does make sure to slip in the interview that he loves Joseph Stalin and celebrates his birthday every year. So this is where we are in the United States of America, in the media today. It is a flaming dumpster fire. And every so often, I think I need to come to all of you and make sense out of all of this. If the federal government or the CIA could create the very perfect agent provocateur, we would be given Candace Owens and Nick Fuentes. Okay. And while I understand it's difficult to look away from those dumpster fires, I would suggest as many Americans do so, because there are major events transpiring in this country today that will actually impact you and your family. Every time you go to the grocery store, every time you try to educate your children, if you're trying to buy a home, if your children are trying to buy a home, if you're trying to get ahead today in the United States of America, all of that is being ripped out from underneath you. The rug pull is intense, and major, major economic headwinds are coming this way as BlackRock buys up suburbia, jacking up prices artificially so that regular Americans can't buy homes, and so that the 21st century reality for every American is a rental society, a renter society. We also have farmers and ranchers who are revolting against Trump's tariffs. They're being crushed by the tariff actions and the volatility inflicted on this market, in this economy, by the President of the United States of America. We have clips on that today as well. And we have news now that Amazon is chopping 30,000, starting today, corporate jobs. They're cutting 14,000 management roles and 34,000 operational roles starting today, following UPS also cutting management roles and operational roles, 44,000 jobs. We have Paramount cutting 1,000 jobs, Target laying off 1,800 corporate employees, and Rivian Automotive also laying off. Hiring is at its slowest pace now since 2009, which we know was the year after the housing collapse. So there's a lot going on, and no one's talking about that in conservative media. You won't hear about that on Fox News or Fox Business. You won't hear about it on right-wing talk radio, because everyone is celebrating the phantom golden economy with Trump at the helm. And now we are being forced to analyze the likes of Nick Fuentes and Candace Owens. So the purpose of this today is not for you to focus on these characters. It's for you to understand how they are created, how they are used to distract and divide the United States of America, but also the conservative movement, which, by the way, Nick Fuentes admitted in the interview with Tucker Carlson very early on. He said his mission very early on was to destroy the conservative movement, right? Because it was in the way of Trump's America First movement, which is, make no mistake, a version of Christian nationalism and quasi-fascism. Very Hitler-esque, which is not surprising because Nick Fuentes also loves Hitler. And we'll see that video today as well. So why are we being groomed? I come away from this. I like Tucker Carlson, and he does good work. He interviews people that I think are very important and need to be interviewed. People like Naomi Wolf and Dr. Mary Talley Bowden and Catherine Austin Fitz, who are regular contributors on the Shannon Joy Show, and I appreciate him for that. He has interesting interviews. I found the Nick Fuentes interview to be interesting. But what is the larger picture here? I came away from that interview feeling as if I were being groomed to accept this false, fake version of conservatism or right-leaning politics, the Nick Fuentes brand, which is completely bizarre. It's not rooted in any type of ideological principle. It isn't really even rooted in Judeo-Christian values. It's some warped version of Catholicism, I suppose, though he didn't really say much about Catholicism. He said a lot of things that I think that right-leaning people or Christians would like, but a lot of things that were just outrageous. It was confusing. It was chaotic. And in my interpretation, after 12 years of analyzing politics and after almost 50 years on this planet, I have learned when things are coming at you fast and furious and they are confounding and confusing, it makes no sense. That is the first clue that you are being manipulated and targeted. And so I'm not buying Nick Fuentes. I'm not buying Candace Owens. And we were able to avoid discussion about Nick Fuentes until now because, of course, Tucker Carlson is normalizing him and presenting him to so-called normal audiences, which I have a problem with. I have a problem with the bastardization of Christianity. I'm not saying that Tucker Carlson is doing that, but we're seeing that in all of these massive organizations like Turning Point USA who are using Christianity and using scripture and using the Jesus Christ style deification of Charlie Kirk to raise tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on a regular basis. I have a problem with that, right? But now Candace Owens, another Catholic Christian, is declaring war on TPUSA because apparently TPUSA is responsible for the assassination of Charlie Kirk. That's the other crazy we have to deal with today, right? Candace Owens coming out and declaring war. I don't know why this is all like dumped into my Twitter feed yesterday, but I'm sure that if it was dumped into my Twitter feed, all of you are seeing it as well. And I feel like we need some sanity here. So I'm going to try to do that today in the first half of this program. Second half, we are going to get to the economy. Very important economic numbers coming out. Inflation up across the board. This is posted by Jason Bassler. We'll look at that. The job cuts. And also what BlackRock is doing and driving up the prices of homes is actually something that every American needs to be concerned about. It is the market rigging, the creation of monopolies and cheating in order to push regular people out of any type of economies of scale. And they're doing it with not just the housing market, but other markets as well. So we're going to look at private equity. Very, very good thread from Anna Matson on Twitter, featuring a really brilliant market analyst named Tiffany Ciccone. I think is her last name. I'm probably butchering her last name. But she had a tweet, an example using fire trucks, of all things. But, it's a good, informative example. But this thread is on private equity, rigging markets, and 21st century monopoly making. It has broad economic impacts like inflated prices and supply shortages is what I pushed out on Twitter yesterday. And the core of the thread that was pushed out by Anna focuses on the crisis of the fire and ambulance truck manufacturing industry, where private equity-driven vulture capitalists are coming in, they are consolidating, they're spiking prices, and they're creating massive backlogs and also endangering public safety as they're cornering the market and creating a monopoly. And so this is systemic, it's systematic. And we're going to look at two examples. We're going to look at exactly how BlackRock is rigging the housing market and exactly how these corporations, many of them tied to the federal government and the politically connected in Washington, D.C., are going in. I mean, this happens in insurance. It has happened in education. It has happened in healthcare. It's happening now in the housing market. It's happening with farming. We're watching the consolidation of power and monopoly creation in sectors across the country. And it is only getting more and more corrupt. And this is why everything is more expensive. This is why you cannot get ahead. This is why we are increasingly living in a debt-driven culture. People can't get out from underneath it, and it's very difficult. This is the stuff that people should be focusing on. This is the type of stuff that I wish more conservatives would focus on. Instead, it is, I mean, the conservatives are now becoming irrelevant, and you're seeing now elevated this bizarro con grouping, the Groypers, the Fuentes national Nazis. I mean, I think he likes Nazis. It's just crazy. It's crazy. Sleeping Giant 111, Candace Owens is central casting. And yes, it is absolutely a show, in my opinion. Personally, I think that these people, and I don't know how extensive this is, and I just get the sense that they are given the platforms, they are given the algorithmic preference, they are elevated so that it's like, okay, this is a great example of when you think about the people that you are front facing every day in conservative media. When you turn on the radio, you hear them on all the major radio stations. If you're on social media, they get the algorithmic preference. If you're watching old fashioned television, they're the ones with the evening shows and all of the best time periods, right? So these people are put in these positions, and it's very similar. Doesn't mean they're any better or smarter or more talented than thousands of other commentators out there. What I think is different is that they're willing to play ball, and they're willing to say what they are told to say, and they're willing to play the character that they are meant to play and told to play. And if they agree to play ball, well, then they make a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars, and they have massive organizations. And Nick Fuentes, being the lead fascist Nazi who loves Hitler and Stalin, I guess, and is acclimating millions of young American boys on college campuses to his version or his ideology, right? It's why he has a massive organization, a nonprofit, and a huge staff. And it's also, as I mentioned, getting algorithmic preference on Instagram, of all places, which is supposedly supposed to be a left-leaning platform, but they just love themselves some Nick Fuentes. So yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot to unpack here. And we're going to try to unpack some of it using some of these clips today. And then we'll get back to the news of the day. Tomorrow, Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, of course, we have our friend, Dr. Mary Talley Bowden, who will join us on the Shannon Joy Show and her show On Call with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden. So we can look forward to that. And on Thursday, I believe we are going to be looking into the Reiner Fulmick situation with an advocate of Reiner Fulmick. We're going to spend an hour on that. He is one of the original medical freedom warriors. He's languishing in a prison, and they are saying that he's being tortured in that prison. And so we're going to look at that. We're not going to forget those he's not a medical doctor. He's an attorney, but those medical freedom advocates who stood up in the dark days of COVID-19 lockdowns. By the way, we're not talking about the democide of 2020 and 21. We're not talking about mRNA technologies. We're not talking about the turbo cancers and the fertility catastrophe that is coming to the United States of America and Western democracies because, well, we put the guy into the Oval Office who did it to us in the first place. And so all of that essentially is off the table for discussion.